Many of you think that NVIDIA and AMD compete with each other, but actually they have a secret cabal where they're trying to prove that inflation is a lot worse than everyone thinks. This is the primary exhibit of that statement, because this is a $480, doesn't matter, mid-range card. And mid-range cards, for those of you who've been building PCs for even just a couple of years, should probably be in the $200 to $300 range. And although name changes can happen, at the end of the day, this, like the RTX 3060, was about a $1 for 1 percentage point improvement, which is just moving the mid-range to a more expensive category and then substituting something in that's equivalent to the former mid-range at the same price it always was. Anyway, we're gonna take this apart today. We already did the review of the 6700 XT, but in doing the review while handling the card for A-roll, I noticed it's got some mechanical issues, so we're gonna look at that. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly. Thermal Grizzly's Hydronaut and Cryonaut thermal pastes are high-performing thermal interfaces for use on CPUs and GPUs. You can bring an old card back to peak performance by repasting it and doing preventative maintenance, and Thermal Grizzly's Hydronaut is ideal for water cooling and air cooling for new and old cards alike. Cryonaut paste is one of the top performing pastes for extreme overclocking with CPUs and GPUs and has been used in several world record scoring machines. Learn more at the link in the description below. So this is the reference model RX 6700 XT. We have some partner models as well. We're just gonna take them all apart and hopefully it's at least interesting. Or somewhat entertaining, depending on how much glue we find. I saw a tweet about this card, specifically about the letter R, and the tweet was saying, AMD better hope that Nintendo's lawyers don't find out about this. So because this is on a non-competing type of product to Nintendo's things that would contain Team Rocket, it wouldn't be confusingly similar, so they should be clear there. It would be unfortunate if Nintendo found out that AMD's PMs wore Team Rocket shirts at the launch event for RDNA previously. That would probably be unfortunate for Nintendo to know. But other than that, there's been no reference to Team Rocket from AMD officially, except for on stage at launch events in a room full of media. So this is the Radeon RX 6700 XT, and we're going to be taking it apart. The GN toolkit is actually in stock on store.gamersnexus.net if you'd like to pick one up. It's got 10 drivers in it, all high quality and specifically chosen for GPU disassembly. They can take apart most of the video cards on the market. We're gonna start with these 4 screws. Is that a warranty void sticker? Don't do that, AMD. That's not, most of the companies, the board partners are starting to figure this out. These are unenforceable in the US and actually illegal, so that shouldn't be on there. But anyway, just pretend it's not there. If you rip the sticker off and you have to send it back for warranty, then you do have plausible deniability that there was never a sticker on there to begin with. Just saying. So 4 screws for the spring retention. Okay, so we're moving to our mod mat. These screws are going through the back plate, and it looks like into the base plate on top of the PCB, the top side. Track them over here. These AMD reference cards are actually pretty easy to take apart. The NVIDIA ones are the nightmares that you definitely should track if you've never done it before. Normally these are pretty easy to figure out where all the screws go because they don't use too many different types. So that is an actual upside to AMD's design. Okay, so back plate should just pop off. I'm gonna be very, maybe just disappointed. I'll be very disappointed if there are no thermal pads on here. All right, so some really, man, like our review title says, the thumbnail said something like "no need to try" or "why even try." And that's what we're seeing here. This is the why try approach to making a video card, because AMD knows they're gonna sell it, and I've said this so many times, but we do actually see other manufacturers start to improve their designs as people find shortcomings or find cost savings. And in this instance, although there's no memory on the back, and although it is just a back plate, it's made out of metal, and it's a natural heat sink. It's not a great heat spreader because it's not finned or anything, but we do genuinely see a couple degrees difference by adding a thermal pad to the back plates. And the reason for that is because if you think about it, it's pretty simple. All the memory modules are right here on the other side. Memory is flip chip BGA. That means flip chip means that it is closer to the PCB, the bottom of the overall silicon package, than it is to the top of the housing, the black housing for the module. BGA means ball grid array. So the silicon's fairly close to this side of the PCB. If you sink the heat on it, it is going to get just overall heat buildup in this area of the PCB down and more efficiently into something else that's metal. And even though this doesn't have a fan on it, there are fans in the case. And so even in a test bench, without a fan pointed at the back plate, which you would probably have in a case, we see a couple degrees difference in memory and often GPU thermals, and that's because you're pulling the heat away from where it builds up. So it's really pretty basic stuff. AMD, I don't know why they can't seem to get it together with this. We do often see a difference, and even if there's not a huge difference with the thermal pads, it's just, if there's any difference at all, when you're paying $480 for basically what is in essence a 5700 XT by price positioning, meaning by value, by frame rate versus the cost, where you're a one-to-one improvement, you should have thermal pads on it. So you're paying a lot of money for this. Anyway, just kind of laziness. Very unimpressed. The companies, if they want to impress us right now, they need to do a lot better. Andrew behind the camera said, but I guess if they want to impress consumers, they just need to exist, which is accurate. Also something AMD has been failing at, though. All their silicon went to consoles, so they've really got ground to gain. There's a lot of these Phillips 1 screws, which isn't a bad thing. It just means the mounting pressure is going to be fairly evenly applied, so that should actually be a positive if we're looking for some. And we're going to need to find some by looking, because the mood of this launch is not too high otherwise. A lot of screws, though. Competing with NVIDIA's RTX 20 series for screws. Okay, so that'll just peel out. Let's get this this I/O plate. Might need to come off. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do. That's a different screw than all the other ones I just pulled out, I think. So just be aware of that if you take one of these apart. You know, in the fantasy land where we can get them. There are different screws in some of these locations. Andrew, can you run to the Unicorn store and pick up some unicorns and video cards? Okay, so this should be mostly ready to come off. Just to scare people. There's 3 Phillips 1 screws there, and then 4 that look like a Phillips 0, which we'll pull out of our toolkit also. This PCB looks very familiar. In fact, where is it? Oh. Okay, so it is a different layout, but somewhat similar. I think this was a 5700 XT. We'll keep that aside. Okay, so now everything is loose. The heatsink itself is also loose. I think you can probably, if you wanted to, I think you can keep the 4 screws we took out first in there and remove, let's see, we'll find out, maybe not. No, there's cables connecting it anyway, okay. Okay, so there's a little stuck on there from the paste, but we were able to dislodge that. There's a couple fan or LED headers in here. I hate this, really hate this design. I complimented EVGA recently in a teardown because their fan header went out of the way to make it easy to take it out in a way that's just completely unnecessary, but was a really big benefit to usability and repairability, probably for their own RMA department. But these fan headers are, so basically these, we'll try and get a better shot of it. I don't know, is this, it's not visible. Why is there a 3080 back here? I did not put that there. That's a 3080 FTW3. This is so bad. I hope someone at AMD watches this. And then I hope that instead of getting defensive about their design, they actually try to fix something. Or they could do what they normally do and say never sample Steve again, he's mean. But I'll explain why in a moment. So this one, there's these two little slots in here, and you basically put the driver in, like the flathead in to the slot, and then push it up, and the cable will come out. All right, so the problem I have with this is this stupid cable, first of all, is incredibly short. Secondly, when users take these apart because they're going to water cool them or whatever, or because they're going to maintain them and try to keep the dust out over time, these cables, people tend to pull on the wires, or they pull the whole thing up and rip it out. And that has a tendency to either rip the header off of the PCB with it, which we've seen in user photos, or to rip the wires out of the header. And best way to avoid that is to use a better connector. So this is an AMD thing, either with a clip on it, which is like fractions of a cent more expensive. That makes it easy for everyone to remove, because then you use your thumb to push the clip. Or just one that doesn't require small pokey tools where you're stabbing near a PCB with a small pokey tool to get a cable out. So I hate these cables. I wish companies would stop using them. They're really easy to rip the headers out and damage the card, especially for users who are probably not taking these apart regularly. And you know, we want stuff that's easy to maintain, because that's just better for everybody. Okay, so there's the cold plate. You can see that the silicon is rotated on this design. It's also smaller and square. And also, is it interesting? Also not, we'll find out shortly. It's very close to not making full contact, but I think despite these corners not being coated in paste, I think it is contacting. Let's see. Not good contact in this corner. That might be our hot spot. So AMD GPUs have an edge and a junction temperature that's reported to you. Every piece of silicon has lots of temperature monitors, but there's actually no paste on this corner of the silicon right there, and as mapped against the heatsink, there wasn't really much paste in that corner either. So bad paste spread or contact. We can look at that in pressure testing if people really care about it. You can actually see what looks like maybe a high or a low spot right in the middle, where there's that ball of sort of denser paste right in the center. Wow, that is definitely a low spot, because there's still paste in that. See that? That's indicative right there of a low spot on the silicon. What I really want to know at this point is if people care about deeper testing on this stuff, because we could really go to town with flatness testing and pressure testing and prove how good or bad these designs are with chemical paper, basically, like we do with our CPU cooler reviews. But I also don't want to do that if people are just going to be mad that we're testing the products. So I guess let me know what you want to see. All right. So it's kind of interesting, I guess. Basically, they have a protruding part of the cold plate, but then a larger section of, we can kind of call it cold plate. This might be partially, let's see, oh yeah, it's bracing. You can actually see it. Okay, so I don't know how visible it is on camera, but I can actually see marks from where this this bar right here, these bars were pressing against this part of the cold plate here. So that's not really for heat transfer. That's going to be for structure. It might be a matter of just trying to give it more surface area to contact with to try and keep it flatter overall and fix some of AMD's previous issues. Or it could be just they went with a larger cold plate to sink more heat, and then they did a protruding part to make contact with the die. Either way, though, cold plate in the middle. It looks like aluminum housing around that. We should probably take this apart. And then this is a base plate. AMD really bragged about how innovative their design was because it does what GPUs have done for the last 15 years and uses a base plate that contacts the memory and the VRM components to then transfer the heat into something else. Truly innovative. Nobody's ever used metal to transfer heat before. Just like NVIDIA's extremely innovative design, their special flow-through design that's been done on video cards for a decade at least. But NVIDIA did it, so they were first, just like AMD's done this. So they're first now. So, all right, we've got a standard aluminum fin stack running vertically. Vertical orientation means it's going to spit the air out the top and the bottom. Out the bottom means it's going to partly go towards the motherboard. Out the top means towards your panel. So some considerations there for thermals. Otherwise, fine. If it shoots out the back, it's a little easier to get rid of. But for the rest of this, aluminum plate with a copper cold plate in the middle. The copper cold plate, actually, is that aluminum? That might be nickel plated. Let me check. No, I'm pretty confident that's aluminum. Okay, so pretty confident that's aluminum. And then copper plate connects to these 3 heat pipes. So it's got 3 6-mil heat pipes running through it. As far as memory contact, who needs it is what I'm getting from this design. So, yeah. So the way they're dealing with the memory is just a base plate that sits right here. And this is pretty standard stuff. Sometimes they'll fin it for a little bit more surface area. Helps a little bit. And you see that some fins over here on the MOSFETs, which does actually help. So very standard design. This should then, at some point, connect with the actual heatsink, ideally. But they do not have any thermal pads connecting the two. They don't want to weld them together because it gets difficult to assemble, but they should at least have some thermal pads. Normally you'll see pads like here on these lower down sections of the fin stack contacting something like the inductors. So in this instance, this is directly above the inductors, and that's a great spot to add a thermal pad and pull some heat away from the board. So air does a decent job at cooling memory when pushed through a fin stack into a base plate like this. Tested that in the past too, but if you can sink it to an actual heat sink, it certainly doesn't hurt. A lot of shortcuts in this design. I'm very disappointed so far for the amount of money. This is kind of ridiculous, but it's got a voltage controller over here. That's an international rectifier, 35217. We've seen these on other AMD devices. So for memory, it's Samsung. It's an 8-pin and a 6-pin. And then for the rest of the card, not much to talk about here. Very standard. This is a waste of metal. And then on the back of the shroud, you can see the R imprint. They've just got 2 screws through it. And I'm assuming glue. No. Oh. Wow. That's actually kind of cool. Might be better without the R. And then the fans for people maintaining these in the future are Delta fans, and the model number is AUB0812, as in 12 volts, VD-00. So that's going to be the model. That's what you would type in to find a replacement in the future. The serial number is down here. You don't need to worry about that. And is what you could type in on eBay or Mauser or DigiKey and find a replacement. It's got a wire. They're connecting these two fans together. And then with, so you just male to female wire. And then over here, they plug it into the board and power both fans. And then this red and black, that's going to be your LED power. And that is going up to this Radeon nameplate down here. You can see the LED bar. So that's pretty much the whole assembly for this card. Really not to give AMD some credit, it's pretty easy to take apart. This looks bad. Actually, it looks really bad compared to the partner models. Partner models are like 6 screws. But in terms of tools and accessibility, they're not doing anything screwy. There's not like weird, well, there's a lot of screws, but it's not weird glue. There's not weird buried screws underneath things that you can't really get access to, like in the RTX 2060 FE or the 1060 FE. So this is not terrible. It's mostly Philips. Actually, I think it's entirely Philips. Has PH1 and 0. Pretty easy to take apart. But otherwise, very lazy, and AMD should have tried harder. So that's it for this teardown. Pretty disappointing for just the amount of money. It's completely absurd how little of that went into the video card itself. This is an extremely standard design. There's zero special about this design, and they're not even, I mean, just there's, like between the base plate and the heatsink, or the back plate and the PCB, there's places this could be improved that would be very easy and show at least some baseline level of care for what people are buying. But anyway, that's the market we're in. Probably, if you're gonna buy one of these at all, it should be a partner model, but we'll take those apart separately. Check back for those on the channel. Thanks for watching. As always, you can go to store.gamersnexus.net if you'd like to support our work directly and get something in return, like one of our toolkits, which are in stock and shipping now, mouse mats, or other items, or you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus for bonus Q&A videos and behind the scenes. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.